I heard you might have needed to cancel on us to get Kamala Harris on.
I was not going to do that. I would have had to. I knew you guys flew from England, and I wasn't going to cancel on you because she had an opportunity to come in. You could look at this and you say, "Oh, you're being a diva," but she had an opportunity to come here when she was in Texas, and I literally gave them an open invitation. I said, "Anytime." I said, "If she's done at 10 o'clock, we'll come back here at 10 o'clock." I go, "I'll do it at 9 in the morning. I'll do it at 10 p.m. I'll do it at midnight." She's up. She wants to, drink a Red Bull, party on.
Yeah, but I think this idea that you're being a diva is silly because you're offering her the opportunity to do exactly what the other candidate did, right?
Well, she actually reached out when she found out that he was coming on. So their camp reached out to me. So I said, great, I would love to talk to her. But it was very difficult to tie it down, and they wanted to travel. And see, the thing is, like, you can't, if I go somewhere, then there's going to be other people in the room. And they want to control a lot of things, I'm sure, according to the Brett Breyer interview on Fox. Like, people were waving them off. That's a distraction. People in the room, like, my whole goal with her and with him is just talk. Just have a conversation like a human being. You find out things about people. You get a sense of them, at least, a real sense. That was it. I don't give a fuck what we talk about. I really don't. I just want to talk to you. Who the fuck are you?
Do you think they think that you're on his side and they're more wary of you?
I don't know. I mean, there's just because of my appearance, there's always been this assumption that I'm some right-wing MAGA guy. I was a Bernie supporter. I am not. I'm a politically homeless person for sure. I always considered myself a left-wing person. I never thought I would ever vote right-wing. But then the tides of culture shifted in a very bizarre way. And it just made me, over time, much more aware of what this stuff is really all about.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about Kamala Harris. Now, we have not talked about Kamala Harris in a long time on this channel, at least not in much detail, because Kamala Harris has went missing in action, okay? Kamala has shown us over the past 2 months, while the Democrats have absolutely no leadership whatsoever, there's a huge void in leadership, that she was not fit to lead this country, okay? She can't even lead the Democrat Party. She definitely can't lead the country, right? So her disappearance, her absence really shows you that she wasn't up to the task. But despite this, you still have some Democrat operatives that believe that Kamala Harris could run again in 2028 and she could win.
So looking ahead, should Kamala Harris run again?
Yes, she wants to.
You think she could win?
I believe she can. I mean, if I didn't believe Kamala Harris could win, I wouldn't have worked as hard as I did to help her win this last time around. Donald Trump, and when you look at politics, Donald Trump and Barack Obama are just enigmas in politics. I think they do something different to the electorate every time they run that you can't counter. But then when they are not on the ballots, it's almost like you go back to the political gravity pulls people right back into it. That's part of how we won with how well we did in the midterms.
Okay, but we have to talk about her because although Kamala Harris is silent and nowhere to be found, her operatives are still out here boo-hooing and crying about why she lost, right? And still trying to make excuses for why she lost, still trying to figure out why is it that America decided to put Hitler back in office over Kamala, okay? And one thing that keeps coming up is this Joe Rogan interview, okay? The missed opportunity from the Kamala campaign to interview with Joe Rogan. And Kamala Harris caught a whole lot of flack for this because it seems as if, at least according to Joe Rogan, that it was Kamala Harris's fault, okay? Her campaign was making all types of demands. She didn't really want to do the interview in Texas. She apparently had topics she really didn't want to talk about. There were things that stopped the interview from happening. And after she lost the election, she ended up getting a whole lot of backlash from people in her own party, people on her side of the aisle, for not doing that interview due to the fact that President Trump ended up getting, 50 plus million views on that video. It was probably one of the most watched podcasts ever. And Kamala Harris seemed to have turned down what could have been damn near free visibility to an audience of people that she desperately needed to vote for her if she had any chance of winning this election.
The vice president was thinking about going on Joe Rogan's show, and a lot of the younger progressive staffers pitched a hissy fit. Supposedly the campaign said that that wasn't the term effective, but they did. When you put a campaign together and you hire young people to do work, let me tell you exactly what you tell these people, what I would tell them. Not only am I not interested in your opinion, I'm not even going to call you by your name. You're 23 years old. I don't really give a what you think. Campaigns are authoritarian by their nature. And if I were running a 2028 campaign and I had some little snot-nosed 23-year-old saying, I'm going to resign if you don't do this, not only would I fire that on the spot, I would find out who hired them and fire that person on the spot.
We ran a flawless campaign except for not having the candidate go on the number one interview possibility.
Except for not outperforming.
Except for
our
spending
last cycle,
$1.4 billion and getting our clocks cleaned. I mean, at that point, it's like, why do you have operatives at all?
What's the point? I don't get it.
If you're going to lose big. Oh my gosh. You know what this reminds me of? That's so funny. So I was in the middle of my career, manager. And then my boss, who is the CEO of this company, gave me a book. It reminds me of this. It's so funny. I think it was written by a political operative, but it's called Dodging the Bullet. And then it's about like how to avoid taking responsibility for any professional failure.
Your boss handed you this?
Yeah, handed me this because what was funny is that we were a software company in healthcare context, and he was like, "Hey, there might be some point at which there's some problem in the hospital setting, and then people might want to blame our product.
Can't be us,
but it can't be us. So just like like look at this book and da 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 da." And I was reading this book, and this book it was essentially. If you were an upright human, you'd be like, whoa, this is a little bit messed up. This is like how to, essentially pass the buck, in any way you can. But that's what that statement reminded me of. And I think it was from a political operative. And I have to say that that quote that you relayed, had me post something on X that said the culture of the consultant class is an underrated reason the Democrats lost.
Yeah, so again, Kamala Harris got a whole lot of backlash for refusing to go on the Joe Rogan podcast. And now you have her operatives coming out here and basically exposing how she was traumatized when she found out that President Trump was doing the podcast as they were negotiating doing a podcast with Joe Rogan. But again, because of the hangups, Joe Rogan went ahead and scheduled an episode with President Trump. And apparently, again, that was a traumatic event, okay? So The Hill is going to discuss this, give the details about this story that has come out with Kamala Harris's team telling their side of the story. So let's get into it.
There was a crucial appearance that Harris failed to land, however, and that was on the Joe Rogan Experience. The Hill recently published an excerpt from a new book titled Fight, Inside the Battle for the White House by Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes.
The book details how the would-be Harris and Rogan podcast episode ultimately fell apart.
In a nutshell, there was a back and forth between Harris's campaign and Rogan's, according to the book, and Rogan's conditions were clear. Kamala had to come to Austin, Texas, and no topics could be off limits.
The book says that Harris's team struggled to find a reason to get her to Texas, since it was obvious to everyone that she would lose that state.
After deciding to throw a rally in Houston, presumably to get her closer to Rogan, Harris's deputy campaign manager Rob Flaherty decided to propose a date. Friday, October 25th, he suggested. Rogan responded by saying that he had a personal day scheduled. What about Saturday morning, Flaherty asked. Only if it's before 8:30, Rogan's people responded.
Then came the shock. The tone is different, Flaherty thought. The Vice President of the United States is offering to come to your effing show, and you keep putting up more hoops. Harris's team still wanted to make it work, but a new wariness set in. On October 22nd, the book continues, the same day the Harris camp announced the rally, the Associated Press reported that Trump would be Rogan's guest on the Friday, the personal day Rogan had originally reserved. Democratic strategist and former Obama alum John Cooper wrote on Blue Sky, "Wow, there's no way of knowing the extent to which this could have changed the election outcome, but Joe Rogan lied through his effing teeth and intentionally screwed over the Harris campaign."
CEO.
Yeah, so I find that to be hilarious, right? Because leftists, out of one side of their mouth, they talk about how Joe Rogan is irrelevant, right? That he's not relevant and that he should just be happy to have Kamala on his podcast, okay? Kamala's doing him a favor. But then on the other hand, they're mad because Joe Rogan lied, which we're going to get into that. I don't think he actually lied. I actually think that these operatives from Kamala's campaign, I think they're lying to try to save face. But they're basically mad at Joe Rogan for not giving Kamala Harris a platform, right? Almost as if Kamala needed Joe more than Joe needed Kamala, which again, that is counter to the narrative that they put out there. Joe Rogan is some irrelevant conspiracy theorist, okay? Because he's not on mainstream news. It's just funny how that works.
And co-founder of the Federalist, Sean Davis, wrote on X, if Harris had gone on Rogan, Trump would have won Virginia, Minnesota, and New Mexico.
Facts.
Editor and CEO of ZTO, Mehdi Hassan, wrote, why didn't Kamala go on Rogan? They all screeched in op-eds and tweets for months on end. Maybe, just maybe, because Rogan, in the tank for the GOP, made it near impossible for her to come on.
Journalist Matt Taibbi wrote, anyone who thinks Rogan didn't want to interview Harris doesn't understand the business. Of course he wanted to book her, but asking for conditions shows a total misunderstanding of that audience. She should have just dropped by and eaten a pile of shrooms with him.
That would have been something worth watching if that had happened.
I would have watched all 3 hours of that, Niall. But okay, so I wanted to kind of run through this series of events and what I think actually happened. Because reading through this, you know, both of us, we've been in the media business for a hot minute, and we kind of know how these things work. So when I read that Joe Rogan had blocked out the 25th as a personal day, at least that's what he told Kamala Harris's team, to me that meant he had already booked Trump for that day, and he was not going to move Trump for Kamala Harris.
Or tell Harris that he had booked Trump for that day.
Because then she's going to leak it to the media, and then it becomes a whole thing, and your big scoop gets taken away. So I thought it showed a bit of entitlement from the Harris team where they suggested that Rogan had lied to her, or not that he had lied to her, but that he had taken a personal day and then scheduled Trump on top of it when he wasn't willing to schedule Kamala Harris. I don't think that's what happened at all. Then you go forward to this Saturday where he says, well, we have to do it before 8:30. So I went back and I looked up, what was Joe Rogan doing on that Saturday? Well, there were a bunch of UFC fights in Dubai on that day that started around 10, 11 o'clock in the morning and went till 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And he had a pre-scheduled live stream a week out from this event where him and 4 of his buddies were going to be doing live commentary on the UFC fights, which apparently they do for basically every fight that Joe Rogan can't make in person. So the fact that it was pre-scheduled on the show, I was like, all right, that's relatively fair. You got to come before he does his UFC live stream. That is a huge part of his business. And the darn thing got like 600,000 views. So I don't think this was an instance of Joe Rogan screwing Kamala Harris so much as it was just bad timing.
Well, it's not even just bad timing. It's just piss poor prioritization from her campaign. So what you have here is essentially these operatives who are telling their side of the story. I think they're the ones that are actually really lying here, right? Joe Rogan wasn't lying. They're the ones that are lying, pretending as if Joe Rogan was the holdup. That wasn't the case, okay? Because I'm going to tell you how messed up these people are. These people originally did not want to go to Texas because Kamala Harris, quote, had zero or less than zero reason to be in Texas. She was in a battleground or bust mode. Plus, a detour to Texas might smell like desperation to the press and a waste of money to donors, the authors also noted. Now, again, I find this to be hilarious because apparently they're worried about her going to Texas to interview with Joe Rogan appearing to be a waste of money to the donors, but these are the same people who were paying Al Sharpton $500,000 for an interview on MSNBC that nobody would watch, and paying Roland Martin hundreds of thousands of dollars for an interview that nobody watched. Again, amazing how that works, right? Amazing. They thought that, hey, you know, we don't want to go to Texas because it might look like we're wasting money, while at the same time blowing $1.5 billion. You can't make this stuff up. So apparently the solution to their problem was to stage a Beyonce concert. Now, it wasn't really a concert. It was just Beyonce showing up to say vote for Kamala Harris and then dipping, right? But they told everybody that she would be singing at the concert. Gaslighting and lies from Democrats as per the usual. But basically, they decided, okay, let's do this thing in Houston with Beyonce, a Houston rally, under the guise of trying to fight against the GOP abortion laws. And that would put her close to Joe Rogan and give her an excuse to go on the biggest podcast in the world, right? And that is the real reason why that rally was happening, right? That whole Houston rally was really just to get her on Joe Rogan's show. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this sounds like some bullshit, right? This sounds like Kamala Harris's operatives, her campaign staffers trying to save face, okay? Trying to come up with excuses for why Kamala didn't do the biggest podcast in the world. Because you're not going to hold a whole rally just so that you can have an excuse to go on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is the biggest podcast in the world. You can just do it, right? Just go, right? I don't understand why is it so hard to take, I don't know, however long it takes to fly out to Austin and to do a 3-hour interview and then leave. I don't understand. I don't get it. You're talking about potentially 20, 30, 40, 50 million views. That's what President Trump got, which again, apparently left Kamala Harris traumatized, right? It was a traumatic event when they saw that the Joe Rogan Trump interview went viral instantly, right? They realized, oh, we messed up. We messed up. All that playing around resulted in President Trump taking advantage of an opportunity that Kamala Harris had an opportunity to take advantage of. But instead, she chose to hold a rally in Houston, a state that she had absolutely zero chance of winning, and still didn't do the Rogan interview, right? Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I think some of this story is kind of made up. I think some of this story is kind of BS, to be honest with you, because, you know, again, if they really held a whole rally in Texas just to have an excuse to go on the podcast instead of just going on the podcast, again, I hope this is a lie, because this shows just complete and utter incompetence from the individuals running Kamala Harris's campaign. This to me sounds like a story that you make up in order to save face, right? This is what happens when your career is over. You ran the worst campaign in history. Again, they blew $1.5 billion and still lost. And they made a whole lot of mistakes. Kamala didn't answer any questions. She wasn't doing any interviews. There's a whole lot of criticism in regards to her strategy. And I think that, again, you have these operatives now coming out and making up these crazy stories in order to try to make it seem like, oh, well, it wasn't our fault that Kamala passed up on the interview of a lifetime, right? It wasn't our fault. Joe Rogan, he made it hard for us. Kamala didn't want to come before 8:30 in the morning to do the interview, which, I mean, I think that she should have, right? I mean, it probably would have made it easier for Trump to win, to be honest with you. Trump probably would have won more states had she went on the podcast, to be honest with you. Probably would have helped, but still, it's just funny to read about these individuals still continue to make excuses for why Kamala lost. Just admit it. At the end of the day, y'all did a piss poor job. But furthermore, and most importantly, Kamala sucks. She's just a bad candidate. And that's it, right? It is what it is. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.